Matthew chapter 6, as I said, I kind of thought about this maybe a little too much, mainly because it is a very familiar passage. And when you're looking at a very familiar passage, sometimes one of my problems is I start looking for something that's not familiar. And so I could be completely wrong on this. We'll see. This is sermon number 13 in our mini-series in the book, or in the Sermon on the Mount. And today is more of a shift. Today is the shift from our private life, because if you think about what Jesus had talked really about with the disciples, much of it had to do with the private life. And then it concluded with prayer, fasting, and giving, which all were supposed to be a you and God thing. But now we're kind of shifting more to the public life, things that people see about us. Not that they don't see our giving and our praying, but we obviously know that God said they're not supposed to see all those things. And so now we're shifting more of our public life. So with that being said, if you please stand in honor of God's word, Matthew chapter 6, verse number 19. And we're just going to do a few verses here because, again, I probably overthought it. Verse number 19. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasure in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I ask that you'd help me, Lord, with this message. I confess that I still feel a little nervous, like I may have overthought it. I don't think I'm wrong in it, Lord, but I do need your help and direction in it. Lord, help us to, in a timely manner, make good application of the text. And Lord, while it's something that is very common to us, it is also very needed in our lives. So help us to apply these things to our lives. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. You may be seated. I titled the message, A Logical Look at Our Focus. A logical look at our focus. Now, while I've overthought the message, I didn't overthink the introduction, so I reserve the right to change my mind later if I decide to. But I have a theory. You ready for the theory? Again, I reserve the right to change my mind. Don't throw rocks at me yet. There's really two reasons why things are appealing to us. Two reasons. Or two categories that everything else falls into. Okay, so the first category would be it appeals to our emotions. It appeals to our emotions. Something like ice cream appeals to my emotions. Okay, and then there's appeals to us logically. Appeals to us logically. So logically and we'll call it emotionally, probably be a good way to say it. And so I already used ice cream, so let's roll with it. Ice cream appeals to me emotionally because when I eat it, it actually releases chemicals in my brain that are endorphins and things like that. By the way, that was put in there by God. It's not a bad thing. It's just it wasn't necessarily put in us for a time where we just have unlimited access to all the junk we could ever want in our lives. It was to teach us, like, God put it there so that when somebody stumbled across like honey in the Bible days, they'd eat that honey, it'd release those endorphins, and it'd tell them to go back and get it for some sustenance, nutrition. That's another story for another day. And then V8. You know what V8 is? That appeals to me logically. When I drink it, there's nothing good about it. I don't really like it. It's not bad, I guess, but it's not good either. It's there. So why do you drink it? Because I know logically this is good for me. So ice cream, emotionally it's appealing. V8, logically it makes sense to drink it, so I drink it. Okay? So you see the difference? You with me? Now, again, I have the right to change my mind on that. That's the introduction, but I'm going somewhere here. Probably wrong somewhere, but just bear with me. In our text, Jesus begins talking about our public life. I've already stated that. But specifically, the things we value, right? That's what verses 19 and 20 are about. I mean, it's not a long text. It's not going to take us long to break it down. He's talking to the disciples about publicly what they value. And in a lot of ways, he's giving them a logical look at something most people look at emotionally. He's giving them a logical look at something that most people view emotionally. So let's look back. Let's break this down. Hopefully this won't take us too long. And I've learned one thing. If you're not 100% sure of what you're saying, then say it quickly and get out. All right, so verse number 19, he says, lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. So Jesus tells the disciples not to store treasures up on this earth. Why do we do that? Why do we do that? Why do we store up treasures on this earth? Well, that's kind of easy. It's due to our emotions. People feel good emotionally when they have things. You got to stick with me long enough to at least disagree with me at the end. We like things. How many of you have ever bought a new jacket and you're just like pumped? You're like wearing that jacket that day. And you just like it. You're like, you saw it, you liked it, you put it on. It was an emotional thing. You could just say, well, no, I logically needed a new jacket. I guarantee if I go to any adult's coat closets in this room, there's probably a few too many jackets. I bet if I stole 5 jackets from some of y'all's closets, you wouldn't know those jackets were gone for very long. You'd be like, oh, I didn't even realize I was missing that. Because we do it. It's emotional. People feel good emotionally when they have things. Most of us here have felt the rush of buying something new. It can be something small that feels good. It can be something big, and things make us feel good. Now let me be very clear here. Jesus, nor the New Testament and Jesus is not condemning us having possessions. Owning private property is not wrong. Saving for a rainy day, the Bible not only doesn't condemn it, it in fact encourages it. The ant, Solomon lifts up the ant because it's stored up in the summer what it could need for the winter, right? So that none of those things are wrong, but here is what Jesus is condemning. Jesus is forbidding. Oh, hang on, there it is. I wanted to read it because I worked hard on this. Jesus forbids the selfish accumulation of goods, extravagant and luxurious living, and the foolish fantasy that a person's life consists in the abundance of possessions. That's really what he's doing. But emotionally, the abundance of possessions feels good. We like our stuff. So Jesus gives us a logical view of it. We like it so much that he gives us some logic. That's what the back end of verse number 19 is. He says, where moths and rust corrupt and where thieves break in and steal. And so in biblical times especially, man, moths, I've never had a moth eat any clothes of mine. I know what mothballs smell like because it reminds me of my great-grandma's closet for some reason, and the mothball smell. But I've never known moths to eat anything, but I know at some point that was a big deal. But that really does happen. Moths eat clothing, and some other things that would happen, by the way. People would store up grain, and mice or rats would get into the grain and consume the grain. People could store up hay, and same thing would happen. So any goods that people could have in Bible times taken, moths could destroy, rust could destroy, and that's still true of us today. Jesus is letting us know, hey, really, I know emotionally this feels good, but let's use a little logic. There's no sense in all the stuff that we love, storing all that up, making our lives about it, living this extravagant life. Why? Because no matter how much I love my truck, one day it will be a rusted out something somewhere in a junkyard somewhere. No, hey, well, I mean, if I take care of it, really, no. One day, everything I love is going to end up moth-eaten, rusted, corrupted, broken. And it's Jesus' way of logically saying, it's just not that important. And even if you can keep it nice, you can't keep somebody from stealing it. Or you can try, but the reality is the best thieves know how to get in and break through and steal. And while I was reading this is what came to my mind. Any of you remember when you were a kid and you got like $2 or $3 for whatever reason, and you had just a little bit of money, and you'd find like a toy that only cost that little bit of money. It was a super cheap toy that maybe you could get at like the Dollar Tree, or it was at the grocery store, but it was in the little toy aisle at the grocery store, and it was like a cheap nothing. And you'd be like, Mom, let me buy this. And she'd say, no, listen, it's going to break the first 5 minutes. I can tell you with just looking at the package, it's cheap, it's going to break, it's not going to last. You're going to play for it for like 30 minutes. Just save your money, save it, and buy something better. You remember that? And yet, what would we still do as a kid, or at least if you were like me? What I did as a kid is I would insist, no, really, it's going to be great. I promise, I won't break it. It's going to be fine. And then I probably wouldn't even get it back home. I'd break it in the car. It would go in the trash. And exactly what my mom said would happen. And the joy that it gave me temporarily was gone. Then logically speaking, what do we focus on? If we're not supposed to focus on stuff that it can be moth or rust corrupted or moth-eaten, rust-corrupted, or thieves can steal. What do we focus on? And so he tells us to lay up treasure for yourselves in heaven. Well, that makes sense. What is the most logical thing? Because again, I kind of got this duality in my mind of emotion versus logic, right? That's the duality, at least I'm picturing here. Emotionally, yeah, but that's a really nice truck. Yeah, that's a really nice gun, though. But man, that's a really nice whatever. My side-by-side, the Kawasaki Mule I have is in the shop, and I found out today the starter's $310 for that. And that's not the OEM one. The OEM one's like $700. And I'm like, man, $310. Man, this is convenient when it works, though. It's nice not to have to walk the 70 yards. Really, I'm saving the church's carpet because if I drive over here, I don't walk through the mud, and then I don't traipse the mud through I'm thinking of the church. And here I am, I'm debating something. I paid $500 for that like 5 years ago. And so it's like, is it worth it? But I want it. It's stuff. It's already rusty, by the way. And so if emotionally those things are appealing and Jesus is saying, think logically, then logically the sound investment, what Jesus is saying is, lay up treasure that affects something that can't be moth-eaten, rust-corrupted, or stolen, which is anything we do for God, anything done for heaven's sake now. So we understand that. But you know what's amazing? How often the logical choice isn't the one we make. No. We can all sit here tonight and go, that's very logical, Pastor. That's very logical. It's so logical that aside from the clothes we need, the roof over our head, the bare minimum to get us to and from work and those kind of things, then everything else we should invest in the things of God. Anybody do that? I'm not raising my hand. I'm not. I'm letting you know. I'm like, well, I mean, do I have a few more suits than I need? Yeah. Do I have a few more pairs of shoes than I need? Yeah. I have a brand new pair of shoes that's just for once, shoes that I don't wear all that often, wear out, so then I have those. Like, that's the definition of unneeded. The shoes I don't wear, those are the replacements for the shoes I don't even wear all the time. So I'm not there either. Why? Why am I not there? Emotions. I'll put this real brass out. Okay, there has been a bottle of V8 in my fridge, unopened and untouched, since early 2023. My wife keeps going, is that still good? I'm like, yeah, it's good till March of 24. She's like, it's January of 24. I'm like, oh, I gotta drink that soon. I bought ice cream on Friday. Despite me being deathly sick for like 3 days, it's almost gone. I could finish it tonight, one serving. Logic, emotion's a powerful thing. Logic has a hard time overcoming our emotions. Look at verse 21 now. Here's what's fun to me. This is kind of the key issue here. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. We have all heard that. You've heard every pastor in the world quote that. Wherever you're storing up treasure, that's where your heart is. But what exactly does heart mean? You know, because we automatically think of our heart, right? Like when we say it, we think of our heart. We think, yeah, that's where my heart is in heaven. Here's what it actually is: affection and desire. Where your treasure is, Jesus is saying, where your treasure is, that's where your affections and desires are. Now, if I had to put affections and desires into a category of emotional or logical, which one would you say it falls into? Emotional, right? At least I think that. So hang on now. Jesus, stay with me. I know, I told you I overthought this. Probably a little too much. So Jesus started with logic. Logically, things of this earth aren't going to last. Why would you spend all that much time thinking about it? Logically, anything that has lasting effects in eternity, that's the things we should be focused on. But then verse 21, it's almost like he throws logic out the window and goes completely with emotion and says, for where your treasure is, there your heart be also. So now, here's where we get in the conclusion and where I might go off the train tracks and you might be hiring a new pastor on Sunday. I don't know. Here we go. Let's go over what we do know. Things on this earth don't last. Jesus made that known. 2, things of heaven will last forever. Got that. 3, whichever you're focused on shows what you love. We got all that. All of that, none of that is new to anybody here, right? We've all heard that. We've all got that before. We've all heard it. Logically sound, 19 and 20. Emotionally sound, verse 21. Why did Jesus have to tell us something that's so logical? If it makes sense, why did he have to tell? Don't forget who his audience is. He's telling, now I understand it's at the beginning of his earthly ministry, so it's not like they were 3 years following Jesus. They were still up-and-comers. But some of these guys had followed John. These are some of the best of the best. They're the cream of the crop of these are the disciples. And he had to tell them to do what was logical. Why? Because we don't. Okay, everybody still with me? Nobody's too weirded out yet? We don't think logically. No, he starts by giving us logic, but I want you to know we don't think logically. Think of every crazy thing you've heard of somebody doing and ask yourself, was that emotional or logical? Somebody murders somebody. Majority of the time, murder is illogical, it's emotional. It's not logical, it's emotional. That's what I mean. It was all some guy in a heat of a moment, some woman in the heat of a moment. Think about when a spouse cheats on their spouse. It's usually an emotional thing. It's not a logical thing. If they're thinking about it, they wouldn't destroy a family. They wouldn't destroy their marriage. They wouldn't destroy their finances. They wouldn't destroy their home. They wouldn't have a divorce. It's not logical. It's emotional. Hang on. Go all the way back to Eve. Whenever Satan tempted her, did he tempt her with emotion or logic? Emotion. I know. Some of y'all are like, okay, we're still with you, but we're a little concerned about your mental health. I know. It's all emotional. The reason Jesus says what he says, the reason he has to say something so logical is because we stop thinking logically because we like emotion. And then in verse 21, he throws out logic and goes with emotion. Right? Everybody remember that? 19 and 20, all logic. This stuff don't last. That's a bad investment. This is a good investment. Verse 21 again, then he goes emotional. For where your treasure is, there will your heart, not fixing the Bible, but what that word means, affections and desires, that's where they'll be. So what am I supposed to do? What does this all mean? I'm sitting in my office. This is why I said I'm thinking too much. Can I give the people at Peakview Baptist Church more than, hey, don't waste your money on stuff of the earth. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your energy on the things of the earth. Spend it on heaven. But we all know that. We've heard that. That's nothing new. Is there something that maybe we haven't seen here that I can point out to them? And here it is. You ready? I don't know. I don't know either. We look at the things of this earth like ice cream and the things of God like V8 most of the time. I buy a truck. I'm super pumped about the truck. No, I'm excited. I'm like, I got to go to the Springs. I'm driving the truck. Holly's like, why? I'm like, I don't know. She's like, the minivan gets better gas mileage. Why don't you just take the minivan? I'm like, I'm going to take the truck. She's like, you just said it only gets like 13 miles to the gallon at best. Why are you going to do that? Because I just bought this truck. I want to drive the truck. Ice cream! Right? But let's use missions. I give to missions. You know what I'm not doing on Sunday? Woo! I gave to missions today. No, by the way, I'm thankful. I usually try to pray over our missions giving, and I know it's the right thing to do, but it kind of feels like the V8, like I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. Right? Everybody with me? Here's what we've got to do. We've got to train our brain, as weird as that sounds to say, we've got to train our brain to stop looking at everything on the earth like ice cream and everything in heaven like V8. Because the reality is, the things we do that last in heaven is like ice cream that gives us the benefit of V8. If we just thought about it different. If we just change our thinking. So this whole message, instead of me telling you what every other pastor would probably tell you from verses 19 to 21, which is I'd hammer on the things that don't last in this world and tell you to give your energy and give your attention and give you focus on the things of God. Instead of hammering on that, what I'm going to hammer on tonight is we've got to change our thinking about the things we do for God. So, real quick, and we're almost done. What is it about things of this earth that elicit a positive emotional response from us? So I thought about this. Again, not too much, probably. So let's use buying a car. When I buy my truck, what is it about buying the truck that feels so good? I broke this down. I really thought about it. If you think of something, add it to it later or come talk to me after, not in the middle because my brain can't handle anymore. That one dirt road that most men have is like, I've got too many cars on it already. We can't. Some of y'all's ladies, just... Okay, so number one, here's one of the things we love about it. It's novelty. It's new. New truck feels, anything new feels good. God has put it in our brain that new is good. New is good. New is good. Now, by the way, that was partly for survival. That was to help us invent and create. Again, it was a God-given chemical reaction. New gives us a dopamine rush because new is good. We're not supposed to fear new. So I get a new truck. It's new. That's one of the reasons it's really exciting to me because it's new. I did like my old truck. Not the point, though. Number two, perceived status boost. That's how I put it. We think we look better. Do I look better when I roll up in a 2015 Silverado over a 2008 Tundra? In my mind, I do. Again, it's a perceived thing. I'm not even talking what people actually think. Majority of people don't care. By the way, if you're buying things to impress people, the odds are nobody cares. Nobody cares. I've never seen somebody drive up in the parking lot and go, stop everything. I got to go talk to that guy about that. I don't care. Like, great. Now, if you have a cool story of how like God gave it to you or everything, that I do like those because I'm a pastor. I'm like, yeah, that'll work into a sermon somewhere else down the line. And but we perceive. So one, it's novelty. Two, we perceive it's going to make us look better. And three, not only do we perceive, we're hoping for compliments. We want praise. That's the word. We want praise. Man, that's quite the truck you're driving there, Brother Stephen. Yeah, it is. Now, the reality is if I tell you the story, it totally doesn't make me look cool. It makes my God look pretty awesome. And that's fine. That's the point. But and you can take away my truck, but you can put anything. A brand new suit. If I didn't need a brand new suit and I bought a brand new suit, why would I buy it? Because I saw it and I was like, oh, I don't have that color. New color. New. And then perceived, hey, that's a Hart Schaffner mark. And I know most of y'all don't even care about suit brands, but that's a Hickey Freeman. Like, you know what? I've never walked in this church and somebody goes, is that a Hickey Freeman? A Hickey Freeman's usually a $1,000 suit. Even if I did have one of those, nobody here would care. You wouldn't be able to tell it from my Joseph A. Banks or my chaps that I bought on Amazon. Nobody'd care. But that's the perceived, right? And then you're hoping for the compliment. Man, that suit looks good on you. The reality is, all suits look good on me. No, just kidding. Okay, different story. All right, back to this. We're almost done. Okay, everybody with me? You ready? Everybody still following me? The whole point of this message now we know what Jesus said. We've all understood verses 19 and 21. We've all heard them preach. We've all heard it. We've been there. Here's my encouragement. We've got to change the way we think. And the reason, and so I had to get into our minds, why do we like the things of buying the treasures of this earth? Because we like those things, the novelty, the perceived boost, the praise that we might possibly get. What we've got to learn to do is have the same energy and thought for the things of God. I already mentioned missions giving. I'm just going to stick with it. So if you don't like that one, plug in cleaning the church, plug in going on visitation, plug in soul winning. We'll do whatever you want. I'm just going to use giving to missions, okay? Does giving to missions, is that laying up treasure in heaven? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. Do we enjoy it the way we enjoy buying like a new car? Not often. Maybe sometimes. So what we need to start doing when we give to missions is now we got to think about all the new people that are about to hear the gospel because of that money. Novelty. No, that's all we're doing. We're choosing to think different. That's all. I know you're saying, well, that's kind of simple. At the same time, it's so hard. Choosing to think different is not as easy as we want it to be. Because logic doesn't overcome emotion very often. So now I'm going to think about with missions, and specifically I'm using missions, but if you Cleaning the church, you could think of the new person that's going to come in here and see this church for the first time. By the way, when I clean, I like to find new things to clean. By the way, I've never run out of new things to clean, and that always excites me too. And that's why, and that's also why my wife hates when I start cleaning things. But new. Number 2, listen, understand God knows and sees what you gave, and you look better in His eyes. You're perceived looking better, you're going to look better, but now for God. And then the last one, love the compliments we get from God because of our faithful giving. And then I got through all this, and it all hit me at once. It's the main change that Jesus has been hitting at for the whole chapter, or even before this chapter, that it's finally just went like the light bulb came on. Listen, we have to learn to love the praise of God over the praise of men. That's the real change of our thinking. That's the whole point. What are the last 3 messages? I know some of y'all, it's been a while, so I'm just going to rehash them. It's give in secret, because your God that sees in secret will reward you openly. So what is it? It's love the praise of God more than the praise of man. When you it was give, there's fast at the end. Which one am I missing? Pray. When you pray in secret, because your God that hears you in secret will reward you openly. It's enjoying the praise of God over the praise of man. When you fast in secret. Don't sink your face in. Wash your face. Don't let anybody else know. Because the God that sees in secret will reward you openly. And then we get to this, laying up treasure. And it's like God saying, did you get it yet? You gotta change your thinking. Because the reason why the things in verse 19, the things of this world are so appealing to you, the reason why is because you desire the praise of men over the praise of God. And the reason why the things of heaven aren't as appealing to you is because you desire the praise of men over the praise of God. And so Jesus' whole point, before we even get into the rest of this whole message, which is great, I'm going to have a lot of fun. But the whole point, it was like God was just like blinking red light at me like, have you got it yet? The whole point here, and this is the whole point I'm trying to get to. It's not just changing our thinking like we've got to learn to get the rush we get for doing the things for God. But really, it's just simply this. If I just enjoy His praise as much as I enjoy everybody else's, I'll naturally lay up all the stuff in heaven. Naturally. So what's your point here tonight? Well, all that to say a very simple short point. Do you love the praise of God, or do you seek the attention and praise of man? Do you love the praise of God, or do you seek and search out the attention and the praise of men? Well, I don't know. I'm not sure. Look at where your treasure is. Look at where your treasure is. That'll tell you everything. Your affection and desire, if your money, if your time, if your energy, if your investments, if everything in your life is geared for things of this earth that don't last, well, that already tells us something about you, that you care about what people think than what God thinks. But if what you have on this earth pales in comparison to what you do for the Lord, all of a sudden you know, well, you really don't care too much about what people think. You really care more about what God thinks. So when it comes to a change of our thinking, it's not even so much that we've got to learn, which I think it is good, to try to learn how to get the rush we get from things of this earth for things of heaven. But really the true point of the whole message is simply this. Just learn to love the praise of God. I just want to make Him happy. I don't care if everybody else thinks I look good. Does God think I look good? And here's the reality. It doesn't matter if I'm wearing a $100 suit, $1,000 suit, $1 million suit. God's not impressed with the suit. He's impressed with the man inside the suit. Or He's ashamed at him as His son. He's either impressed and excited and in God's way proud, or He's upset at the son He's raising. So, really tonight, I want you to think of your purchases. Think of your life. Think of what you spend your time doing, where you go, what you do, who gets so much of your time and energy and money. And I want you to ask yourself, am I doing this for God? Am I doing this for somebody else? And if it's anybody else, it's wrong. Now, by the way, let me just, real quick. If you do things for your spouse to get the praise of your spouse, that's fine. There's nothing wrong. I like when my wife says I look good, which is all the time. And that's fine. She's the one that should think I look good. She married me. And you know what? When she dresses nice, she's hopefully not looking for praise from everybody else. She's looking for praise from me. That's not wrong. But I'm talking about, why did you buy that car? Would the world be more benefited if you gave what you gave for that car to missions? Well, that's crazy, Pastor. There's a lot of people that do it. Why did you have to have those clothes? Was it because you just had to feel a certain way emotionally? Did God tell you to buy it? Now, by the way, you got to come clothed. Come to church clothed. But you understand, with everything, there's this logical, emotional balance. And who are you ultimately trying to please? So this is simple application. Look into your life and ask yourself, with everything that you're doing, who am I trying to please? If you want to sing a special, who are you trying to please? By the way, I've sang specials where I know my heart probably wasn't, this is all for God, where somewhere in me was saying, and I hope everybody says, I sound really great. You know what? In that moment, that was moth, rust-corrupted, stealable stuff instead of something done for God in heaven. So just evaluate your life. And if your thinking is off, change your thinking. Change your thinking. Let's pray.